Insights of All Trades podcast.
I think in Harrisburg, so a lot of it, unfortunately, is not merit-based, it's seniority-based. So to be a committee chairman, for example, say you are a pro-life committee chairman and somebody of the health committee, and you have somebody introduce legislation that's pro-choice. Say it's pro-choice and 110 members of the House support it. We have 203, so that's obviously a majority. And they're doing what their people want, so that might be what a majority of Pennsylvania wants. But as that pro-life committee chairman, you can totally kill the legislation without ever even taking it up for a vote. And our committee chairman and leaders in the House have a ton of power that is actually slightly different at the federal level because you can file discharge petitions, you can get a certain amount of people to sign on to your legislation, that you can get it out of the committee whether the person supports it or not. But in Harrisburg, you can basically, if you're the chairman of a committee, you can bring up your priorities and you can kill things that aren't your priorities. And there are people that wait around for 20 years just so they can be the transportation chairman and enact a program that they've been dreaming of for 20 years. And, you know, so I am running for re-election. I've been very successful legislatively so far. I don't brag about this in Harrisburg, but I might be the only freshman legislator that's had 2 bills signed into law in my first 6 months. But at the same time, a lot of the big things that you can change come further down the road when you have a little bit of seniority, when your colleagues trust you, and when you're entrusted with higher committee position.
One thing I'm really curious about, can you just walk us through what a typical day in session is like in the House? Are you just sitting there listening to speeches mostly, doing your own takes, or what's happening?
Sometimes giving the speeches. But yeah, it's tough. It's totally different from a day here. So I spend about half and half, Harrisburg and here. I'm in Harrisburg 3 days a week, 3 weeks a month, and then here the other time. Going to meetings, going to certain public events and things like that. Because in addition to wanting me to listen, people also want to see me. I need to show that I'm trying to listen to them. After we pass the budget, we're usually out for July and August. And we're supposed to be doing community events and things like that. So I'm doing a lot of local things here. Fairs, carnivals, everything you name it, you'll see me there. But in Harrisburg, it's a lot of fun because you're pulled in 7 different directions at once. And I am a little bit ADHD. You can tell by just the way that I talk and the fact that my answers have been 10 minutes long sometimes. And so I like that. They actually put me on 5 committees in Harrisburg, and I sometimes end up with 3 committees at the same time. And so you're going to one for 20 minutes, then another one for 20 minutes, maybe asking a question, maybe just absorbing.
Real quick, what are the 5 committees that you're on?
So I'm on Judiciary and Ag that I already mentioned. And Ag is really cool because it's Ag and Rural Affairs. So we do a lot with rural broadband funding and things like that as well, which is important for things like this podcast. So I'm on Judiciary, Ag and Rural Affairs, Health, Human Services, and Children and Youth. So I already got to mention my Health and Human Services interests as well. And children and youth is important with the foster system and things like custodianship of children, things like that. Can get pretty contentious sometimes, but it's interesting at least. So it's typically committee meetings and meetings back in my office up until 11 o'clock. And that can go, typically 7:30 to 11 or so. Sometimes 9 to 11, just depends on what I have scheduled. And I love that because you're learning about so many different issues, sometimes not even related to my committees, but it might pertain to an upcoming vote we're taking in the House or something like that. It's just a lot of fun to learn about. And then 11 o'clock, we actually go into session. And in the United States, if you watch C-SPAN, it always focuses on the speaker because there's never anybody actually sitting in the seats listening to debate. Well, where the United States Congress is more like a college class, the State House is more like a 4th grade class, where attendance is mandatory. We can get excused, but if you're in the House that day, you have to be there to vote. And we all have assigned seats. So then we're down listening to debate on issues. And sometimes it takes 2 hours a day, and we're out by 1 or 2 o'clock. And, recently when we were doing the budget, we were in a few nights until 11 p.m. at night. And you're debating issues, and you're talking to your colleagues on the side. You can go off the floor and have conversations if you're trying to negotiate a certain piece of legislation. and it's just a lot of fun. So it's debate from there, and you're listening to people with different ideas than you or the same ideas from you, what they think. You're advocating for your own bills, things like that. And then sometimes if you adjourn early, you'll have committee meetings after session as well. So you'll go back and talk about bills in the committees. So what happens is you have to vote something out of a committee, and the committee, you're expected to kind of be a subject matter on those issues. And then it goes to the full floor for discussion and debate and ultimately voting. And just in layman's terms, things have to pass both the House and the Senate. Then they go to the governor, who's like the president of Pennsylvania. And so once we pass things, if it's already gone through the Senate, it goes on to him, or it goes over to the Senate so they can run it. And just because there's a lot more of us, we are actually able to pass a lot more bills than the Senate can because there are less of them and they can focus on less issues. So it's a lot of fun.